Hi everybody. If you've been following along, then you know that we are currently in the process of moving from Canada to Australia. An extensive process. It hasn't been easy.
But we have been lucky enough to get a lot of help from support groups online, and we have come up with a few questions that people are continually asking, and we thought we'd give everyone the helping hand that we got.
Just to start this off, we're probably going to answer all of our questions and then have a separate segment where we break down our table of contents. And I just want to preface all these answers and explanations with the fact that we are not professionals. We do not know the true ins and outs of how to make this happen. This is strictly our experience and everything that we've learned going through a working holiday visa application and an exemption and a de facto partnership. And hopefully our experience can help yours.
Do you have to be married to apply for a visa?
No, you don't need to be married to apply for a visa. Kirra and I aren't married, but we have been living together for 1 year, and us being together constitutes the Australian de facto partnership, which is akin to Canada's common law relationship.
Yeah. In terms of the actual visa, it really comes down to a case-by-case thing. Ayla's visa is just a regular working holiday visa. It's called the 417 visa that she could apply for without me. But for the exemption, having that de facto relationship was really the key factor for that.
Yeah, we will put a list of links at the bottom, and you just want to make sure that you're going through the visa and you're going through the requirements for anything, especially if you're traveling right now during the pandemic. For the requirements of a de facto partnership, that is listed within travel exemption requirements. That will also be listed below. Do you need a job lined up before applying for a visa?
No. Although it really depends on what type of visa you're going for. If you were going for the working holiday visa like Ayla, then you definitely don't need to have a job lined up before you go. But there are different visas specific to specific jobs. So it really depends on what you want to do when you get there and what is required for your type of visa. I heard on a working holiday visa you can't have the same employer for more than 6 months. Is this true?
As far as I'm aware, this is correct. This was an option that Kirra and I found most viable for our specific needs. In our game plan, we're wanting to hit soil in Australia, and from there on, we will probably aim to switch to the partnership visa. What type of evidence do you need to prove your relationship?
So, as we mentioned earlier, there is a list of things that you need to prove as part of your relationship to get an exemption to enter Australia.
As far as I understand, these are the 4 pillars of an Australian de facto relationship.
The 4 pillars for a de facto relationship are finances, your household, social matters, and commitment.
For finances, they're wanting to see that as a couple, you guys are sharing the burden of financial responsibilities. They're hopefully looking for joint bank accounts, and this is one that really slipped us up. For us, a big thing that we learned from a video from Zoe Bankowski, which we will have listed below as well, is that if there is something that you cannot answer in your exemption form, don't just skip it. Address that you don't have it. For our sake, it was
a bank account. We don't have a joint bank account and didn't really see the point in getting one here before we left.
And it's okay to state that.
Yeah. So what we did instead was we told them that we didn't have a bank account. We told them that we were planning on getting one when we got to Australia and what bank we were planning to use.
In household responsibilities, they're looking for ways that you guys share the burden of household duties. How do you guys manage laundry, dishes, upkeep, around work schedules? Is someone staying at home? Are you both working and contributing to the house? How do you do this?
Something that we put in ours is that I like to do a lot of the cooking, which means that Ayla gets to do a lot of the cleaning up.
But it's something that honestly makes our relationship really work, and it was easy to recount in our proof for exemption.
When asking about social matters, they want to know that you have friends in common and that you like to do things outside of your home.
Something that Kirra and I were able to share was a lot of our tickets to art shows that we had been to. We went to see Anastasia, the musical, before we left. So including the tickets and receipts for all these different events and things that you go to together really helps. In this section, you will also include photographic evidence, hanging out with friends, hanging out with family, wedding invitations, anything like that.
It's really important in this section to prove that you have connections to people outside of just your immediate relationship. Don't just show photos of the two of you together. Show photos of the two of you with your friends or with your family.
In this section, we were also asked to have letters written from friends and family members.
We also had a bunch of our mutual friends write their experience of us as a couple.
For commitment, what they're looking for here is how well do you guys know and understand each other as a couple. I had to write my understanding of Kirra's background, what I know from her growing up, how we connect in relation to how we've grown as individuals.
It's also a great idea in this section to show that you've talked about your future together and what you expect from the relationship, to show that you're on the same page and you know what you want.
But they're looking to see that you guys are planning a future together.
One of the questions that we specifically received was, when are you planning on traveling? We leave in 6 months. Should we start now? Absolutely. You should start the process as soon as you can. It took us around 6 weeks.
Yeah, I began applying for my visa in the middle of October and started applying for my exemption immediately after. I did not receive either of them almost 10 days into December, so it took almost 2 months before I finally got all of my information.
And that's a short case. I know people that have been trying and they didn't get their exemption until their 30th try. So it's better to start early and know that you have the time, especially since the exemption doesn't expire. So you're not going to have to worry about getting to Australia by a certain point of time.
And give yourself plenty of time. Don't book any flights until you know that you have that visa and exemption in hand, because those factors are completely up in the air and aren't for you to control. So make sure you have your visa, make sure you have your exemption before booking a flight.
Especially with the way flights are going right now, you don't want to be out of pocket for all of that money.
This is a government document about a relationship. Should I be emotional or factual?
We started this process off on possibly the wrong side. We were thinking exactly the same thing, and we thought, it's going to a government official, we're going to make it factual. We're going to keep it separate from our emotions. And I really think that that was our biggest downfall in the first few tries.
It's a very difficult thing to remember, but at the end of the day, the people that are reading this understand that you're a couple, and they also want to see that. You're a human applying to the empathy of another human. So they want to see that this is something that you care about. They want to see that the relationship is genuine. And if you sound distant or very matter-of-fact about your relationship, it can read as possibly a feigned relationship.
My partner and I have been dating online for 1 year. Are we considered de facto right now?
Unfortunately, we're not the professionals. We're not the one in the hot seat that gets to decide whether or not your relationship will be deemed okay for travel or necessary for travel during the pandemic. All I know is that one of the requirements is that they're looking for 1 year living together. If you can't prove that, they want to see compassionate circumstances as to why they should consider you outside of that. It's going to be incredibly difficult. You can try, but there's no guarantees. Do I need a cover letter for my exemption application?
On our first few tries, we did not have a cover letter. But towards the end, the cover letter just meant that we could connect with the person on the other side of the screen and make a more compelling argument as to why we deserve to be able to travel together and why it was important to us. So for us, I really think that it helped in the long run. Did you make any changes to your exemption from the first time you applied to the last time you applied?
For Kirra and I, we made countless revisions. We were hoping to originally travel at the beginning of February, which was exactly 3 months from when we had started applying for this whole process. So we were trying to work as fast as possible to make all of this happen, and kind of had a knowledge that this was going to be very time consuming and tricky to acquire.
This meant many long nights of us staying up and revising everything that we had written and completely starting again in some cases.
Pretty well every 2 fails on the exemption that we had, we went back and rewrote. It's like 150 page, 150,000 word document, and we were constantly reworking this. Again, we started off very factual based and got more emotional as time went on, especially adding extra bits in, because every bit along the way, even though they're not giving you any hints or clues as to why they're not accepting you, you're getting more and more information as to how to do this process better. So we went back and added stuff in constantly, which often meant revising other parts so that it helped support the evidence that you are now adding.
Have you felt like there was any discrimination through the process because of your sexual orientation?
Honestly, my answer to this is no. There was no outward kind of trouble or complications, nothing that suggested to us that there was any kind of discrimination or scrutiny on that level. But it's hard to say because we're not on the other side. We don't get to know what they thought of us. At times, it's easy for the self-doubt to kick in and you start thinking maybe this is a factor that's really affecting it. But by and large, no, I don't think we were.
It's important for us to say that it hasn't taken us any longer to get our exemption than it's taken other heteronormative couples. So I can't really say that that was something that we really felt on our end. Of course, when you get your rejections, you're never really told why you're not exempt. So, as Ayla said, we're not sure, but for me, I don't think it was an issue.
Now, we have a very stripped down version of our table of contents to show you, to give you an idea of how we structured and laid out our exemption application. For the first page, you want a very coherent and cohesive table of contents. You want to make sure that it has all the information. You want to make sure that it is very plain and simple to read.
For our first point on our table of contents, we stated our reason for travel.
This is something that I wrote, and this was talking about my need to travel. It's my exemption. Kirra is free to go home because she's an Australian, but for me to go with her, I needed to get the exemption. So we talked about the importance of our relationship and the importance of it growing over the past year, and that we did not want to be separated, and that I needed to return home with her. Our second point for our table of contents was compassionate circumstances, and this is something Kirra wrote.
Yeah, I was very matter of fact here about my reasons for wanting to return home and the fact that I haven't seen my family in a long time. This is where you really want to drum into them that this is something that you need not only because you want to stay together, but for emotional reasons.
As well as Kirra's visa being ended. This puts a lot of financial pressure on her being able to stay here. It puts strain and emotional stress on her family, being able to support her while she's out of the country and has no source of income. The second point for our exemption application was a timeline of our relationship. This is a very quick, jotted out calendar highlighting some of the big points that have happened in our relationship. For example, when we started seeing each other, when we first decided that this was a relationship, when we first moved in together, and other big events that have happened in our timeline.
This also included any events that we attended together. Our next point was Ayla's statement.
So this is a statement that I wrote, and it's compiled of the 4 pillars. So I talk first about what it meant for me meeting Kirra and literally going in detail. I'm talking like 3 pages of detail, how I first met Kirra, where I was at in my life, what I thought about her, and how that changed pretty well day by day as our relationship started to flourish and as crushes eventually turned into a blossoming relationship, and even further from there, how that relationship became as strong-rooted as it was, moving in together, and how we got to where we are today. After that first bit of writing, then I start to cover the financial issues, the household issues, our commitment to one another,
our social matters. This is where you really want to come in on all of those 4 pillars and answer any of the questions that they ask of you.
Kirra's statement follows afterwards, and it is the exact same format, but from her side.
Yeah. So everything from my perspective, how the relationship developed on my end, and the goals that we had wanted to achieve in our life.
As well as the 4 pillars. So once again, both partners need to write an in-detail, thorough article on how the relationship formed and our emotions and feelings through that process, as well as each of our perspectives on the 4 pillars. They want to see that it lines up. They want to see that we have the same view, even though we are 2 distinct, different people with different ideas and mindsets.
The next thing we put in our exemption was all of the letters that we got from our friends and family about our relationship.
We kept this very easy for them by separating it page by page. Don't condense letters altogether. Put them page by page, and in your table of contents, you can then reference each letter from each person and their relationship to you 1 page to the next. After this, we include references and identity. What this segment does is it allows us to show our lease, it allows us to show our passports, driver's license, anything that we have to verify we are legally who we say we are.
Yeah, it also was a place where we put a statutory declaration that we made here in Canada to show that we were committed to this relationship.
Our final bit, which is the biggest part of the whole thing, was photographic evidence.
Just underneath this, we leave a remark stating, supporting evidence shown in photographic evidence is referenced throughout the document using bold numbers. For example, see photographic evidence, figure 1, etc.
We must have included about 50, 60, possibly 70 different articles, and this covered a number of different issues. Whether it was tickets to an event we went to, wedding invites,
just photos of us with our mutual friends.
Pretty well anything that you can back up with photo evidence, whether it's receipts to stuff you bought to support your household matters, or whether it is hanging out with friends, you want to be referencing throughout your entire exemption application with bold numbers or references to this photographic evidence.
We found that this was the easiest way and the most direct way to add our photographic evidence in without inserting a picture every 2 lines.
So this entire application document was put into the travel exemption portal, and the only other document that we included when applying for our exemption was a separate document including our entire text messages. Everything that we had shared with each other on WhatsApp from the very beginning of getting to know each other to present day was put out in a typed document and submitted. This has been everything that we knew and learned and used in our exemption application. Once again, we are not professionals. We don't know the ins and outs of this, and we don't know the ins and outs of navigating this process with different visas.
This has just been our experience with this process. Also, if you have any more questions that we haven't answered, leave them in the comments down below. We will be happy to answer anything, but just remember, it's just our perspective.
It's just a perspective, our opinion, and we are not professionals, but we are glad to help however we can, because we are so grateful for the help and support that everyone else has given us in this very difficult process. Well, thank you once again, and hopefully our experience can help yours. And just remember, anything is possible. You just gotta really try and do the research, especially into something as difficult and professional as this, to make it happen for you.
And why leave your dreams in a journal? Bye.